And welcome back to Bayou Time. I'm Martin Falls, and very pleased to have once again with us the first lieutenant of the Terrebonne Parish Sheriff's Department, Lieutenant Blake Tabor. But he has a special guest with him today, and I love it when young ladies and daughters shadow their daddy around. So, Blake, thanks for bringing Loren here.
welcome.
Loren, just real quick before we get into some serious news, how old are you?
10.
10. And where do you go to school?
St. Francis.
And how do you feel shadowing your daddy today? It's a good experience, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right. Well, you keep smiling, okay? All right, Blake. Very, very wonderful young lady. Let's talk about some serious things. First of all, we have about three things to talk about. Let's start off, I guess, with the apparent homicide incident that took place.
Sure. So on Saturday night, our units were called to the Jolie Oak subdivision in response to reports of gunfire there. Once we arrived, it was a pretty chaotic situation. We were able to determine that there was at least one person that suffered some pretty serious injuries as a result. And they were transported to a local hospital where, unfortunately, the young man was pronounced deceased a short time later. As investigators continued to work through that case, we were able to determine that it was a large party that was being held in that area. The estimation is that it was well over 100 people at that location. Excuse me. And subsequently, they were actually able to determine that there were two additional people that had gunshot wounds as a result. One was another female partygoer that was an innocent bystander, of course. And then the other was an elderly female who was shot while she was in her home. So, of course, as always, we're continuing to follow leads. We are getting some information reported to our agency. But again, this is a way for us to reach out to the community and let them know that we want all the information that's available. We have some persons of interest that have been developed. We're obviously not releasing that information at this time. But we do want the community involvement in this. I mean, that's the only way that we're going to get this solved.
And y'all always reach out to the public. And I remember in the early days, it was hard to do because we didn't have all the avenues where they could reach you all. But
Absolutely.
now they're just a fingertip away.
Absolutely. You know, and not only can that information be disseminated to our Violent Crimes Division within the Detective Bureau, but we have Bayou Crime Stoppers now, which that information can be reported anonymously. And no one ever knows that that occurred, and that's done for a lot of reasons, but the majority of it is a safety concern.
Right there, you see it on the screen. So pick up that phone if you know any information, and help the first lieutenant and his crew, and help the sheriff find out more about this unfortunate incident. If we could, let's switch gears because they had an attempted burglary at Cycle World. What do you have on that for us?
We did so. Back on June 8th, our sheriff's office was reported some information of a stolen U-Haul truck that was in the area of the 5500 block of West Park Avenue. Of course, anytime that those situations occur, our deputies immediately responded to that location and began looking for that particular truck. Of course, it's a U-Haul truck, so it's not very hard to spot. As they began to patrol some of the local apartment complexes in that area, they were able to find a truck that matched that description. As they approached that vehicle, they observed three male subjects standing outside the truck, and the deputies reported that the males appeared to be removing gloves from their hands and throwing them onto the ground. So, of course, that immediately becomes very suspicious, so the males were taken into custody and detained, and of course, they were able to determine that that truck was, in fact, a truck that was stolen or is classified as stolen. The male subjects were identified as Davion Thibodaux, Dalen White, and then an unnamed 17-year-old juvenile male who we are not releasing his name at this time. So, of course, the investigation culminated in a search of that particular truck for a multitude of reasons. And once they did that, they located a large number of what we refer to in our world as burglary tools. Those items that are consistent with the use of burglary or forcing entry into a business or a home. So once those things were noticed, of course, our detective division was immediately called in because they specialize in these types of cases. And they were able to quickly determine that those male subjects were obviously attempting to break into the cycle world. Now, this isn't something that is new to our agency, of course. Unfortunately, Cycle World has been a hot spot for burglaries over the last few years. We have seen sort of an influx in that, not just in our community, but across the South. And so, it's something that we have dealt with over the last few years, and we keep monitoring very closely. As the detectives continued their investigation, they determined that Davion Thibodaux had outstanding warrants for his arrest through Ascension Parish Sheriff's Office, which subsequently was linked to a burglary of a motorsports business in their jurisdiction. It's my understanding that that particular case led in a vehicle pursuit where Mr. Thibodaux actually departed the area and was unable to be captured, but he was later identified and the warrants were obtained for his arrest.
All right, that's good work by you and you guys on that, looking at all the tendencies. We'll take a break. We'll come back, and we will do another segment here with the First Lieutenant, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. We'll also jump to a narcotics task force story that we're going to talk about. So we'll take a short break. We'll be right back as, once again, the First Lieutenant has his daughter with him today, shadowing him, and we certainly appreciate Lauren coming by today and being with her father. That's great to learn from your dad. So we'll take a break. We'll be right back. Today's social media segment is brought to you by South Louisiana Bank. It's better when we bank together. Waits and Downer, attorneys at law. Terrebonne Ford, built Ford tough. All right, welcome back as we continue to talk with the First Lieutenant, Lieutenant Tabor, about incidents taking place here in Terrebonne Parish. Let's jump now to a narcotics task force story that has some different twists to it, and I'll let you take the lead on that.
Absolutely. This actually was a phenomenal arrest. So, we always love taking every opportunity we can to highlight our narcotics task force. They do an amazing job at what they do. In addition to that, just the level of suspects that they have to deal with as far as danger on a daily basis is pretty remarkable. So in this particular case, in May of 23, the Narcotics Task Force began to receive some information in regards to narcotics activity. That was some anonymous-based information. But the way that information came in is they quickly identified a Kenneth Anthony Lawson. He's a 39-year-old male from Houma who was the subject of that particular tip. Of course, in any narcotics-based investigation, the agents do their due diligence and began doing some research and background check into Mr. Lawson. And upon doing that, they were quickly able to determine that he had 2 outstanding warrants for possession with intent to distribute heroin. So that culminated in them locating an address in the 800 block of Bayou Gardens Drive where Mr. Lawson was believed to reside. They were also able to link a specific vehicle to the use of Mr. Lawson. So as a result of that information, they began to monitor him on a regular basis. On June 6th, shortly after 8 p.m., while they were monitoring Mr. Lawson and his residence, they observed Mr. Lawson and a second unidentified male exit the residence and attempt to get into the vehicle and pull out onto Bayou Gardens Drive. Once they did that, the belief is that Mr. Lawson and the unknown male quickly determined that it was a unmarked police vehicle, so they quickly turned back into the parking lot and attempted to park the vehicle. Our agents noticed that, and of course, they quickly exited the vehicle and made contact with Mr. Lawson through the driver's door. They were able to positively identify him as the driver of that vehicle. However, they were not able to identify the second male before Mr. Lawson sped off at a very high rate of speed. course, the agents gave chase through various streets within Houma on the west side, ultimately leading the agents to the 100 block of Stovall Street, where he crashed into a fence of a residence at that location. Both males then exited the vehicle on foot and, of course, got away and were able to evade capture. As they continued that investigation, of course, they found some evidence located within that vehicle, which assisted them in leading to a search warrant at the address of Mr. Lawson. You see photographed here the amount of evidence that was recovered. So at the culmination of that search, agents located over 220 grams of suspected heroin, close to 100 grams of suspected methamphetamines, one rifle, one handgun, a large assortment of ammunition, and various other items of drug paraphernalia consistent with manufacturing and distributing of illegal narcotics. So that, of course, ended in a multitude of charges that were obtained as far as arrest warrants for Mr. Lawson. Our agents continued to try to locate him. And of course, they were somewhat unsuccessful in doing so. The belief was that he was hiding out. And ultimately, he turned himself in on June 8th to authorities. I have not been briefed on whether Mr. Lawson spoke with agents at that time. It's my understanding that he invoked his right to an attorney, and then he was ultimately jailed. So the multitude of charges led to an $837,000 bond by local judges, which we were extremely happy with.
Mm-hmm. That's a high bond when you talk about.
It's a very high bond.
And what was the reason? I guess y'all were pretty successful in setting the case, especially with all those weapons.
Sure. And I think, when you combine weapons along with narcotics, and then you take in previous history and previous arrests of suspects, those tend to lead to higher bonds. That's always one of the hot topics whenever we put information out on social media is the price of bonds or how high or how low a bond is. And, I think it's important for people in the community to realize that a bond is set on a multitude of classifications. Judges will look at previous arrest record. They'll look at the violent tendencies of a person. They will look at things such as whether that person is a flight risk. There's a multitude of things. So it's not just as easy as saying, well, this charge is a distribution charge, so let's put a high bond on it. There's a lot of other factors that go into that. But ultimately, those bond amounts are set by local judges. The sheriff's office and the community doesn't have any involvement in that.
Yeah, and real quick, with about a minute left, once you get in a high-speed chase, as we used to see on the beat quite a bit firsthand, it changes the dynamics. Their adrenaline's rolling.
Absolutely.
They're nervous for a reason. You don't know if the weapons that we just seen are in the car.
Absolutely.
So the police have a tough time, but trying to assimilate what's going on instantly.
Absolutely. And, when you're on a traffic stop, more than likely it's just the person inside the vehicle and the officers present whose lives are in danger. But when someone takes off in a vehicle, now you're taking, people on the street that are innocent bystanders, and you're taking their safety into your own hands. And that becomes a very dangerous situation.
All right, well, great work, and we appreciate it. And as always, we thank the sheriff for allowing you to come on and be transparent with us a lot. And we want to again thank Lauren for coming in. And Lauren, I'll tell you what we'll do. Since you're shadowing your daddy today, we got about 15 seconds left. I want you to look right up in that camera and say, we'll be right back after a short break. Ready? Go.
We'll be right back after a short break.